so many words. Words of story, words of memory, and words of prayer. What you do not need are words of explanation. What we need tonight are words of proclamation. I said on Sunday, if you hear the story so often, you know the characters. You know Jesus and Peter and Mary and his mother, whom he simply calls woman. You know Pilate and Judas and Caiaphas and all the rest. And you know the drama. It is about friendship betrayed and justice denied, injustice appeased, innocence abused and faith insulted, and yet through it all a new creation evoked, and humankind is redeemed. And you know about the symbol of failure, this symbol of utter desolation, this execution by crucifixion. It was invented by the Persians, it was perfected by the Carthaginians, and refined by my ancestors who used it as a method of state-sponsored terrorism. And yet through all of this, you also know the words of one who was called Isaiah the exile. And so many centuries before these events, he wrote these words. He wrote of a man who was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering. He has borne our infirmities, wounded for our transgressions, and by his bruises we are healed. Through it all, never forget this is a day of love. It is a day of passionate love. A love for a lost humanity. A love for me. And for everyone who sits in this church who says the words, it was for me. For greater love has no one than to lay down one's life for one's friends, and you are his friends. For as sad as this day was for those who followed him, and as gleeful as I suspect it was for the co-conspirators and the powerful elites who wanted to get rid of him, this is a day of triumph. This is a day of victory, and this is a day of how you demonstrate love. God declaring from the cross, you are my friends. And greater love has no person than the willingness to die for your friends. There's an ancient Christian prayer, and it kind of goes like this. Praying to God. God of power and might, we praise you for your Son who has come in your name. For he is the hand that you stretched out to sinners, and he is the way that leads to your peace. And when we had wandered so far from you, through your Son you brought us back home. You gave him up to death so that we might turn again to you, and in the process find our way to one another. Great teachers and far greater preachers than I have reflected upon the mystery of this cross. It is the symbol of failure, and it is the symbol of public execution, and Christians say it is the symbol of the greatest of love. The child whom we recognize in the crib of wood, God with us, Emmanuel, speaks from a cross of wood. He speaks of one who is going to be lifted up. When I am lifted up, redemption will occur. And use the imagery of the winning Super Bowl coach is lifted up on the shoulders of his teammates. It is being lifted up in glory. The cross is his throne, the cross is his glory, and it is our salvation. And when you think of Christ crucified in your prayer and in your reflection, in your memory, think of someone who was ignorable, dismissed, suffering, unimpressive, marginal, rejected, the victim of treachery, soon to be dead and buried, and yet John can say in the beginning of his scripture, we beheld his glory at that moment. We beheld the glory of one who allowed us to accept God's forgiveness, a God who always wishes to forgive. We just don't want to hear it. We beheld the glory of one who established a new covenant. We beheld the glory of one who reminds us that I'm not condemned to try to impress God or to please God or to earn God's love. It's always been there. It's been done for us. It is a gift given that I will never deserve. I've never deserved it. I never will. And the most important thing is I don't have to. For our sin, he was lifted high upon that cross that he might draw the whole world to himself. For by his suffering and his death, he became the source of salvation for those who would put their trust in him. So we call tonight Good Friday. Not because we celebrate evil, and not because we have some sick fascination with suffering. Certainly not because we glorify death. This is Good Friday because this is the day the power of death dies forever. And yet it's followed, and it's a stumbling block, and it makes no sense. And I strongly suspect, except for a few women who had the courage to be there, in the eyes of both his friends and his enemies, Jesus was just another pathetic, delusional, lost soul, cursed and abandoned by his own God, who cries from the cross the words of the 22nd Psalm, my God, why have you forsaken me? But you prayed that psalm a couple of moments ago. Did you hear the words you said? Because it does start out with that lament of desolation. But pray through the entire psalm. Read it to the end. That is not a cry of lost hope. That is a cry of victory. Through the eyes of faith, the tree that causes death becomes the tree of life. That tree, that cross, makes us stop, gives us direction, and gives meaning to my life. But the cross is only the first part of the story. It's not the end. The Paschal mystery is yet to be completed. It's dark outside, appropriately. The darkness is here. But the darkness itself is about to die.